Hello and welcome to Dawson Football's That's Not News. I'm here joined by Dan Wiseman at the Etihad Stadium as we go live for the first time. So I'm joined by Dan Wiseman. Dan, welcome to That's Not News.
Great to be here.
You're going to be here every time I'm here.
I look very good.
Be my sidekick. We'll talk about the first bit of news that isn't really news, because Danny Cowley's been the manager of Huddersfield Town now for, 2 weeks?
Mm-hmm.
He had his first game on the weekend just gone.
Yeah.
He's got obviously another game coming up this weekend. His first game was against Gary Monk, who's obviously a new manager as well, at Sheffield Wednesday. What about Danny Cowley do you think has led Huddersfield to take him from Lincoln and go and try and save them from the absolute doom that they're in at the moment?
Well, I think when you look at it, Huddersfield Town just don't score enough goals. It's been a consistent problem for them since they were in the Premier League last season. I think they've scored 5 goals in 8 games this season, 2 of which have been penalties. And they're just having a real problem. And I think what the Cowley brothers bring to Huddersfield is they're very inventive as a partnership. You know, we saw with Gareth Southgate using Lincoln as inspiration for set-piece routines during the World Cup. They're very creative with the way in which they get teams to score goals, and I think if you're a Huddersfield fan at the moment, whether it be set pieces, whether it becoming in free play, whatever it will be, goals are goals at this moment in time. Huddersfield Town need to start scoring, and the Cowley brothers bring a sense of, as I said, inventiveness to it. And I think because when you look at the attacking talent that they've got, I think Steve Mounier could be a decent player in the Championship. We've all seen what Carl and Grant can do in the lower leagues, and they have got the players there. I like Adama Diakabi as well. I think he's something of an unnurtured talent, but I think there's something you can really work with there. I think when you're sitting those in front of the likes of Alex Pritchard, there is definitely potential for Huddersfield, and I think the squad is there, and I think it's a good appointment when you look at it.
The Championship's a tough league, though. You've got to look at Nathan Jones, who's obviously come to Stoke City, and we've underperformed. There's no two ways about it. Taking that step up from what is a comfortable job in League One, where maybe he could have got his team promoted, just as Nathan Jones nearly did with Luton. The Cowley brothers, both of them, have taken a risk, because Huddersfield is a sinking ship. There's no doubt about it, and they don't score enough goals, but you can see too many goals. And there's nothing really about them that strikes you as a team that's going to go for promotion at any point. They had 2 or 3 solid years in the Premier League under David Wagner, and that was definitely the peak for them. I don't think they're going to reach that peak for a long time now.
Well, I just don't think it's a sustainable Premier League model as a club. I think it was all a bit of a surprise when they went up in the first place. No one had them on it. I think at the start of that season where they got promoted, no one was considering them as favourites. I certainly, as someone being in the Championship with Villa at the time, I wasn't particularly worried about Huddersfield. They came out of nowhere, and they were a good addition to the Premier League. They surprised teams on a number of occasions, but as I said, I think when you look at the club, the finances involved, and I think finance is another reason why I think Danny Cowley makes sense. He's a manager that's used to have been working on a limited budget, that has signed well. And I think that will help Huddersfield because they're not the most cash-strapped of teams in the Championship. So I think again that's another reason why I think they might have turned to lower tier managers.
Yeah. I think bringing in a young English manager now is what people want to do. We've shown it at Stoke. Obviously, Frank Lampard at Chelsea, was at Derby, Gerrard at Rangers.
We've done a similar thing with Dean Smith.
Not that young, but okay. Dean Smith as well. Bringing in these young English talents, people aren't looking abroad for the managers anymore, other than obviously your likes of Pep Guardiola, Jose Mourinho. But it is certainly a model that people are going to try and follow now. And Huddersfield, I still think it's risky.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Championship, they're going to have to battle now because they're joint bottom.
Yep.
1 point from I think 7 games. It's not looking good. Where do you think they're going to finish this season?
Well, unfortunately, I like Huddersfield, but I think you need a few seasons to recuperate. It's very rare nowadays that you see teams bounce back immediately. It's so difficult to do. Because you come down with the Premier League and there's so many changes to the squad, and you have such an influx of new players combined with players who have been there not too long themselves from the season before, and it can kind of give you a somewhat uneven balance in the squad, and it's difficult to manage. So I think They potentially need a season or two to recuperate, develop an identity, which I think is very important when you go into the Premier League now, if you're going to have any success going forward, because it's not about getting into the Premier League anymore. The hardest thing to do is stay there. And so you need to have a club identity, a philosophy, similar to like what Wolves has done, where you can hit the ground running, really come into the Premier League, and you know exactly who you are, what kind of players you're after, the kind of mentality within the squad that you need to create. And it takes time to set up something like that. It's not something that can happen overnight, especially when you've got a new manager like Danny Cowley, who's going to take time. You know, and this is the other thing that is going to be important for a club like Huddersfield, is patience, because this might not work at first. This might take a long time to get going, and so this season I can't see them getting up to too much. I think, you know, they are potentially looking at you know, if they can kind of finish in the top half, I think they'd be pretty lucky at the moment, because it's going to be difficult for them. But yeah, I don't think we're going to be looking at Huddersfield Town in the Premier League for a little while yet.
They have made the change at the right time though, early in the season. They haven't let themselves get too bogged down by the early results. Jan Sievert was always a strange point.
Mm-hmm.
They were trying to follow the David Wagner model again. They were trying to repeat what they already had, and it just wasn't going to work. So for the Cowley brothers to come in, it is, like you say, it's a project now. And there has got to be an element of patience. None of this 6 games in, haven't won a game, won the manager out. It's now a patience game where it's going to work out, I have no doubt about it, but it's about how long it's going to take, and it's about how long the board can really resist making a knee-jerk decision, because football boards are very impatient. So this Huddersfield project is certainly going to be a long one, and the Cowley brothers have got to be in it for the long haul.
Well, absolutely, because you know you have to be patient with managers like this, because it's such a huge step up for them. I think, you know, when you look at Danny Cowley, he's gone from Braintree to Lincoln to Huddersfield, and that's a remarkable come up in such a short period of time. And quite literally, that FA Cup run with Lincoln is what he'll be remembered for there.
Absolutely.
First time a non-league team's got to the quarterfinals now for 100 years or something like that. It was an incredible, and see, you kind of, everyone attaches to a story like that, and it's certainly put him in everyone's frame of mind, I think, that cup running. But as I said, he's come up from Braintree with only one job in between there and what is, you know, what would have been last season in the Premier League team. So it's, as I said, patience is going to be key, but the squad is there. I think there's potential for it to work, but it's going to take a lot of time.
You say the squad is there, I see a name, I see Fraser Campbell.
Yeah.
When I saw that he joined Huddersfield Town, I thought that was a very, very strange signing. He was a youth prospect at Man United. He's played for a mass amount of Premier League teams. What about him is going to help Huddersfield going forward when they've got strikers who are... Steve Mounier can be a very good striker.
Definitely. Well, we saw Steve Mounier, you know, glimpses of it. Goals were... With Huddersfield, when teams go down from the Premier League, you kind of look at some teams that kind of have... They internally implode, and it's like... I'm going to use Villa as an example because it's something I've seen personally, where we went down for a number of different reasons, but it was just a terrible mentality of the club. The players didn't want to try hard enough. But at Huddersfield, you couldn't fault the effort. The players always tried 100%. The fans turned out in numbers every week. They never got on the club's back. The problem was they just didn't have the quality. That's what it came down to, in my opinion. It just was that they weren't good enough to stay in the Premier League. And when you look at the team, I think Tommy Elphick was someone that at Villa they brought in as well. We released him after we got promoted, but he showed signs pre-injury, and that is the big problem with Tommy Elphick, is his injuries, of being a really good defender. And he's 32 now, and he's shown shaky moments this season. But it's just about the players, and I think it kind of brings back to Mounier as well, whereby you know that they have the ability, and these are good players that they've signed. It's just whether they can get the best out of them in the system that Cowley wants to create.
Norwich came out on top 3-2. What about that Norwich side has defeated Pep Guardiola?
Well, I think it was just their lack of fear, to be honest with you. I love the way that they pressed Man City. You know, they showed... A lot of teams show a lot of respect to Manchester City, and we've seen teams run them really close. I remember Crystal Palace at the Etihad last season did a similar sort of thing, and they just came at them 100%. I think Laporte's absence, you know, when we learned that he was going to be out until, I think it's around the Champions League quarter-finals that they're going to lose Laporte, it's a big loss for City because he's such an important player. I think that caused problems, and we saw it. I mean, the goal that Pukki scored where Buendia dispossesses Otamendi, there's a complete confusion in their back line, and that's so uncharacteristic of Man City because they're usually so good defensively. But yeah, I think Norwich although themselves, I think they had 8 key players out for that game. Norwich, they had huge injury problems.
Yeah. There's a video obviously doing the rounds on Twitter that I saw where it just shows Man City got a high press, they're high intensity, they're very energised, and they're pressing Norwich, and Norwich are just still playing their own game. They'll just pass the ball to the side. They'll make them risky passes that need to be made. That it's very Manchester City-like of Norwich.
Yeah.
Is it that Daniel Farke has played Pep at his own game?
Well, I think there certainly is an element of that, yeah. But I think that's the only way that you can beat Manchester City. I think you have to take it to them. You have to, as you said, play them at their own game. And I think that's exactly what they've done. And I think in Pukki they've got a talisman. Big questions were asked of Norwich, in the first few games of the season, especially after that game at Anfield, where they played very expansive and were actually criticised for it. They got defeated, and people were saying that Daniel Farke was naive to come into the Premier League and try and play such expansive football right from the off. And there was a lot of people saying that at some point they're going to have to change. They're going to have to be more pragmatic and kind of grind results up, so to speak. But at the moment, I can't see any reason for them to change what they're doing.
And Timo Pukki is a key part of that.
Yeah,
Timo Pukki, the latest feature on the PLX series on Dawson Football. But he is a key feature of that side. He's a fantastic striker who, until last season, had only really played in his native country, and has just come into this side and has just come into the Premier League, in fact, and just torn it up. He's surpassed all expectations.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been fantastic. I saw his stat just here. So he's been involved in 8 goals, 6 goals, 2 assists in his first 5 Premier League appearances. Only Man City's Sergio Aguero has been involved in more in a player's first 5 appearances in the competition's history. So that's the kind of influence we're talking here. I'm getting strong Michu vibes from Timo Pukki this season.
Michu, what a man!
And yeah, but that, kind of joking apart, that is the question here with Timo Pukki, isn't it? Is how long this can carry. If Norwich's survival, I hate to say it, but it solely hinges on him. I would say.
He's got to carry that team.
He's got to keep doing what he's doing, because when you look at Norwich's squad, Buendia's a good player. I think Todd Cantwell has stepped up nicely into the Premier League.
A very good player.
And Jose Dermich on a free will get goals, but I don't think he's someone that you can particularly rely on.
He's not going to knock Pukki.
No. And so that's the question: is whether they continue this for the whole season. I'm still not entirely convinced. I'm still taking it with a pinch of salt, because a lot can change. But Norwich, if you were a fan, you're a part of the Carrow Road faithful, I'd be feeling pretty optimistic.
Riding on the crest of a wave. It's Manchester City though that are also in the headlines at the moment. Laporte out, John Stones out. They're really lacking now. A defensive partnership that they're going to be able to rest on, and that fans that are sat in this stadium are going to go, yeah, I'm okay with them in my defence, because listen, Nicolas Otamendi could be a great defender, isn't, because his mindset I don't think is right. He panics when he's on the ball, and that is not a Pep Guardiola centre back.
No.
You look at the likes of Gerard Piqué, Company settled into that role.
Yep.
So now for Otamendi to be that commanding centre back, because Fernandinho is the obvious choice to slot in next to him. I don't think that City have got that defence to rest on now, and they're going to have to attack even harder.
Well, it's going to be hard, because we're now, now that the Champions League has gone into full flow, and I know that City haven't exactly got the most difficult of Champions League groups, but it's more games, it means more rotation. Fernandinho, the reason that they bought Rodri in the first place was because Fernandinho is ageing so quickly. He's been such a fantastic player for Manchester City, but he's like, the last few years, the years have really caught up on him, and you can really see him start to age. And Rodri's been a fantastic replacement, but if you're asking Fernandinho to A, step into a position which he's not uncomfortable as playing, and B, play kind of 2 games a week in that position, serious problems for Man City.
It's a big ask for such an aging player who has played probably 38 game seasons for the past 7 or 8 years. Is that a downfall of Pep Guardiola? He hasn't got that depth that he necessarily needs to be champions again.
Well, definitely. I think Company left and they didn't replace him. And even at the time, with when the injuries weren't a problem, I still kind of looked at that a bit sceptically. I think it's difficult to replace a player like Vincent Kompany, but even just to have that extra body in the squad, they've got Felipe Sandler, who can step in at centre back, Eric Garcia as well, 2 young players, but it's a lot to ask them to step into this team where pressure is so high right now, and they need to consistently deliver trophies, because how many years can Man City go without winning the Champions League? I mean, the last time Pep Guardiola won it was 2011 now. That's almost 10 years since Pep last got his hands on the Champions League. It's as much of a quest for him right now I mean, he got agitated in his press conference.
Yeah.
We didn't know with the Fraudiola comments. You can see that it's starting to get to him a little bit.
I think it definitely is starting to get to him, and I honestly don't believe that they're going to retain the lead this season if they carry on as they are with the injuries that they've got. January is a big month for Pep Guardiola.
Oh,
he's
huge.
got to get that depth in his squad again. He's got to be able to. He's got to have 2 players in every position, as in 2 players in right centre back, 2 players in left centre back. As a minimum, you need more than that because it's a long old season with Champions Leagues, FA Cups, League. There's a lot of games to play. Guardiola, it's going to be a struggle.
Absolutely, mate. And you know, I think with Liverpool, now that they've won the Champions League, I've been speaking to a few Liverpool fans, and there's only one thing that they care about this season. They have to win the Premier League. I think Klopp has realised it, and I think they'd sacrifice it now, honestly. The Champions League right now cannot be a priority. Liverpool have to win the Premier League. There is no two ways about that, and I think they're going to go gung-ho for it, and I think that's what Klopp really wants his hands on this season. And so I think if you're Man City, I know it's early doors, we're speaking, it's the 20th of September as we record, there's a long way to go until May. But right now, with the extent of the injuries and how long they can be, I think, is it 5 weeks they've got no Stones?
Yeah.
You know, I said Laporte is going to be out until about April. January is a huge month. They need to recruit, and they need to recruit well. They need players who can step into this fold immediately, settle in. And Man City have been very good. You have to say that the signings they made are very astute. They usually settle in very well, especially the ones that Pep has made. I mean, I'll use Rodri as an example. I mean, the other way we haven't actually seen João Cancelo yet.
No, it's true. But it is also... Do you think that if Guardiola fails to deliver either the Champions League or the Premier League this season, it could be his last season in the Premier League?
Well, I think it will be for a number of reasons. I think you look at Ernesto Valverde's situation at Barcelona, he's not particularly liked, is the best way of putting it, in Barcelona. That Liverpool game last season at Anfield, I can't believe he didn't lose his job after that, to be honest with you. I think the fact that Ernesto Valverde is still in the job there. So I think Pep's going to have one eye on that kind of situation. But as you said, there is a huge pressure on him now, and he has to provide the Champions League for Manchester City. This is a club that is so desperate for it. And to be honest with you, is it going to happen? I wouldn't put them in my list of favourites.
There's a lot of teams that I think perform a lot better on the European stage.
Norwich.
That's it. Okay.
And I think, but I mean, bringing it back to Norwich, fantastic for them. You love to see it at the end of the day. I think, I'm going to look at this, everything else aside, from an emotional point of view. You saw what the scenes at the end of the game
You love an underdog.
to those people. Absolutely. I'm an Aston Villa fan. Norwich are one of our competitors this season. I could really have done without that result, to be honest with you personally. But even I was...
As a football fan,
that's what you want to see. And I think it's important that teams realise that clubs like Man City, like Liverpool, aren't invincible. Do you know what I mean? That you don't have to just sit and play backs to the wall football and hope that you don't get beat more than 2-0. You can chase these teams, you can get after them, and you know what, if you're lucky, and there were elements of good fortune in the Norwich victory, I think it must be said, but they worked for it and they deserved it, and they came close. And I think when Aguero scored that header, we all thought, here we go, this is going to be
back.
This was going to be turned around, but they kept their heads. And when you are 2-0 up and Sergio Aguero scores and Man City are piling on the pressure, it's so easy to lose your head in that situation.
Is it that's a testament to Daniel Falk?
Oh, absolutely. I think his team kept the mentality. They didn't buckle. It would be very easy in that scenario to defend that 2-1 lead and try and protect it, but they didn't. They came out in the second half exactly as they did in the first and got the result they deserved.
Fantastic. So next, the news that isn't news, it's really, really not news, is Frank Lampard being the manager of Chelsea. But that's not what we're going to talk about necessarily. We're not going to say, Frank Lampard's just been appointed. We're going to say, Frank Lampard has been at Chelsea now for quite a few months.
Yeah.
He's settled into his job a little bit now. So on Tuesday just gone, they played in the Champions League, lost to Valencia.
Yeah.
It wasn't really a Frank Lampard performance.
No.
But then you look prior to that in the Premier League, they beat him 5-2 at Molineux, which is a big win for Frank Lampard.
Huge. And this is what has been so confusing about Chelsea this season, is they're so hard to gauge. In that the results are inconsistent. As I said, we'll use the Wolves' performance as an example. I know Wolves aren't the team this season that they were last season for whatever reasons, but as you said, winning 5-2 at Molineux, Tammy Abraham was electric, might I say. What a performance it was from him that day.
You love him.
I do love Tammy, and I think we kind of bring it onto the youth players because they're such an integral part of this Chelsea team. But what I like most about Tammy is you can play him any way you like. He's quick, so you can play him in behind. Obviously, his height means you can play him as a target man, and I think he suits Lampard in that regard because Lampard is going to have to be pragmatic in a lot of games this season. Yeah, with the squad that he has, he's not the squad that isn't a top 6 side, is it? If you look at the 11, it's not there. You can argue that on paper Leicester have a better 11 than Chelsea do, I think. And so he is going to have to be pragmatic. He's going to have to change his system depending on who he's playing, and I think that's kind of what we've seen from Chelsea. If we look at the last results I've got them here, the 4-0 loss away at United, then they lost at Liverpool in the Super Cup, and those performances were just 3 days after each other, the one at Old Trafford and the one in Istanbul, and they were so contrasting. In one game they completely fell apart, they were terrible at Old Trafford, and although I think 4-0 was slightly complimentary in that game towards Manchester United, I didn't think they perhaps warranted a 4-0 victory. To then go and take Liverpool to penalties, it was 5-4 in 3 days. I think that says all you need to know.
And for a young player, that is a tough ride to go through to come out of a game that you've just been whitewashed, and then to go, you've got the travelling, you're not sleeping in your own bed, which people will say is a small thing, but for football players, it's massive. Yeah,
definitely. It's a lot for these players to have to come to, and I think that's what we saw in the Champions League night, is that there's no Champions League experience really in that side. I mean, obviously you've got the likes of Aspilicueta, Willian, Pedro, who have been there kind of for a long time now, but the core of that squad now has very little Champions League experience. They've got a relatively difficult group. I think they'll be disappointed with that Valencia defeat.
Especially at home.
Yeah, because Valencia as a club are at a point of kind of internal combustion right now. They've they just sacked their manager Marcelinho in the week, and so it was a good time to play Valencia. Is what I'm trying to say, and they didn't capitalise upon that. And Liverpool come to Stamford Bridge this weekend, and I'll be interested to hear what you think about that, because that is right now there is no club that is a bigger test for a manager than Liverpool.
And it brings you back to that Norwich Man City game. Chelsea have just got to go for it. They can't be scared of this Jurgen Klopp team. That front three, scariest front three in the world at the moment. Sadio Mane, Roberto Firmino, Mohamed Salah are the most dangerous trio in world football. So for this young Chelsea defence, the likes of Tamori, Christensen, there's young defence there. It's a young base of a team. What they've got to do is be brave. And I am sure Frank Lampard will instill this into them from the day he walked in. That Chelsea team is going to be one that will always try their best to go toe-to-toe with the best teams. If they fail, they fail. But you've got to be able to look at yourself in the mirror as a football player, I suppose, and go, I gave it my all out there, whether we lost. If Liverpool are a better team, Liverpool are a better team, that's fine. But if they don't perform as Frank knows they can, it'll go horribly wrong.
Well, that's quite where I think perhaps having such a young squad will kind of help them with that, I suppose. I think, I'm going to use Tammy as an example. He has such a burning desire to play for Chelsea. The transfer embargo for players like him, for players like Mount, for players like Tamori, Hudson-Odoi's just signed a new contract. This transfer embargo means opportunity at Chelsea. And they're a club who have been so heavily criticised in the past for not giving opportunities to young players. I think it's a shame that Ruben Loftus-Cheek can't stay fit, because I'd love to see what he could offer to this Chelsea side, but he's
just such a good driving force.
I love Ruben Loftus-Cheek. I think he's such a talent, but he's just so injury prone, and it's a shame for him, because I do think, right, for Chelsea, Lampard was a bit of a free hit. In a lot of ways, because if he didn't go well, and I think it's gone reasonably well so far.
It's gone as you'd expect.
I think I wouldn't say it's gone well. I wouldn't say it's gone badly. I think it's a very difficult job for Lamps, and I think probably quite fortunate to get a job of that calibre. I think
it probably, it's definitely, there's an air of fortune about it, but he's worked very hard. That Derby team last season was, the quality of the side didn't reflect their results. Their results were above where they should have been, and they finished well. They went to Ellen Road in the playoff semi-finals and were fantastic. they were unlucky, I think, not to be promoted from the way that they just set out about the season. So for Frank to get that job is a testament to the work he did there. But being a club legend, I think it's a very smart move by the board at Chelsea, especially because he's going to get more patience than anyone will have got. Conte, fans ran out of patience with him basically as soon as he won the league. Sorry, they didn't like him from day one. You've got managers that they've had in the past. Do you remember Luis Felipe Scolari? Lasted about a day. There's not a lot of managers that Chelsea fans like. So Lampard is a smart move, and that is probably why he got the job.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's why, I think a free hit is what you'd call it for Chelsea, because they have the obvious, is excuse the right word? Probably not, but I think of the transfer embargo being there provides a lot, kind of scapegoat for Chelsea whereby they can put that. And I think the loss of Hazard was so big for Chelsea, and not being able to replace him. I mean, I know it's kind of a different, but losing a star player, look what it's done to Real Madrid. Especially they haven't replaced. It's only now with Hazard that they've kind of really replaced Ronaldo, and even Hazard isn't a replacement for Cristiano Ronaldo. We've seen the damage that losing a player who is the heartbeat, that is everything, your go-to guy in the clutch situations, it can really damage a side. And I think when you look at Chelsea, I think they've recovered well from that. They've established a new identity. I think Mason Mount is just as key for Frank Lampard's Chelsea as he was for Frank Lampard's Derby County. And I like what Chelsea have got to offer. I like the way that they've gone about this, and you'd love for it to work. And I think all their goals this season have been scored by English players 23 or under, who were all in the Championship last season.
Fantastic. It's a great stat. And Tammy Abraham really is, and it pains me to say it because last season he just got on my nerves. He just kept scoring. I just wanted him to stop. But he really is a really, really good young English talent who he's going to get the England call up. He's going to, and I would imagine if he carries on as he is now, he'll be one of England's top strikers. I'm not saying he's going to be Harry Kane. I'm not going to say he's Wayne Rooney, but he's certainly going to. He can score goals, and he's fit. He's athletic. Is he always going to be in that Chelsea team? Probably not. When Chelsea haven't got a transfer embargo, Frank's going to rub his hands together a little bit and go, got all this money I want to spend.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's an important season for players like Tammy, because he's given Lampard a dilemma now, and I think although having Mr. Abramovich as chairman will provide him with a lot of opportunity to go out and get a world-class striker, Tammy has to prove that he's the man, that you don't need to go and spend 40-50 million on a new striker, that he can be the guy to lead the line. There's a lot of weight on his shoulders, and lo and behold, if he does pick up a knock or anything like that, you look at kind of Giroud is still there, but I don't think mentally
I actually forgot he played for them.
Yeah, well, there you go. He was linked with a move away during the summer, and I think Olivier is.
He's not a Frank Lampard player.
No, exactly. I mean, the fact that Tammy is starting over him, Giroud's got Premier League history. He's shown that he can score goals. Above all, perhaps he's not the most attractive footballer in the way that he plays and the kind of way that a lot of sides want to play the game right now. That kind of causes a problem for him, but Tammy's the man. Giroud's going to kind of want out, and I think they will get a new striker in there, but whether that's with Tammy as a backup or Tammy as the main man, will be seen over the rest of the season. Depends on how many goals he gets, I suppose.
So in a new feature for That's Not News, we're going to play ball, but quiz ball. It's a new quiz feature now.
Let's go.
So we're going to ask 3 quick-fire questions each. You've not got long to answer them. Don't sit there thinking about it, because I can't be bothered to edit all of that. So just be quick about it.
Let's do it.
So I'll let you fire your 3 questions at me first. Let's go.
That's tough. Right. Which British team has won the European Cup more time than its own top league?
Liverpool.
Notts Forest. Which player has played in the North London, Merseyside and Manchester derbies and has won the Premier League, the FA Cup, the Champions League and the European Championship?
Craig Bellamy.
Nicholas Anelka. That's 0 for 2.
Fantastic.
Who has the most appearances in the Premier League? It's a keeper. I'll give you a clue.
I actually know the answer. This is really embarrassing.
Come on, you can get this one. You gotta get one.
Come on.
Oh, you were close. I saw it.
Shea Given.
Oh, David James.
Right, so I got 0 out of
3.
3. That was the most embarrassing thing, and I don't even want to put that on the internet.
Right.
You
I've
ready?
got to get 1.
I
Come
hope
on.
you don't. As of 2018, which English footballer scored the most goals in World Cup finals?
Harry Kane.
Gary Lineker.
Oh yeah. Oh.
That's 2018, Dan, come on. When Michael Owen retired, which was his last football team?
Stoke. Got you.
I'm not playing anymore, this is a stupid game. Which English player scored the opening goal of the Euro 96 tournament? You're even born.
Which England player?
Yeah.
Gaza.
No, Alan Shearer.
I got 1.
You still beat me.
So we got a combined 1 out of 6 there, mate.
That was fantastic.
Top content, guys.
Dawson football, that's not news. Thank you very much for watching. We'll be back in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
We'll let some news flow by.
Yeah, and we'll be 2 weeks later. It's whatever's fresh right now.
Which is great,
Yeah.
because then it won't be news, and that's the name.
That's why we're here, guys.
That's not news. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you subscribe and like the video, share it where you can, and visit us at dawsonfootball.com. Thank you very much.